Hello and welcome to the Rum Revival. It's Arminder, and today I'm going to give you an overview of the rums that make up the Hamilton lineup. I'm going to share details on each of these rums, give you my tasting notes on them, tell you which ones I like, which ones I don't really like, and my overall opinions on the range. Now, for a lot of people, these are some of their favorite go-to rums to mix with at home, and on top of that, tons of bars throughout the country use them in their cocktail programs. That being said, this video won't focus on these rums as cocktail rums. For that, check out this video that Derek from Make and Drink has just put out where he goes through this entire lineup and tries them in daiquiris. Now, what I'm going to do in this video is talk about these rums as sipping experiences. Now, you might be saying, these aren't sipping rums. And to that I say, yeah, of course they are. Yeah, anything you can put in your mouth is a sipping rum, regardless of how cheap or expensive it is. Now, what's great about these rums as sipping experiences is that lots of folks already have them at home, right? These are pretty affordable rums and people like to mix with them. So if you want to dip your toes into drinking rum neat, don't feel like you have to go out and buy something brand new to do that, right? There might just be something here that you end up really enjoying, or which kind of helps spark an interest and taste for sipping rums in general, and then maybe even sipping other rums outside of the lineup. So Hamilton is named after Ed Hamilton, who is the force behind the brand, and essentially what Hamilton, the brand, not the man, though I guess the man is the brand, whatever. Hamilton is essentially a bottler and blender. Hamilton sources rums from various producers and maybe even third-party brokers. Not entirely sure about that, but either way, those rums are sourced and then they're bottled at very specific proofs, or Hamilton will make custom blends of a couple different rums and then bottle them. And Hamilton has kind of done a lot of, actually fairly last couple of years now, a lot of custom blends for specific bars and restaurants, for rum societies, and even for a YouTuber. And before you get excited, no, that YouTuber is not me. So there's a lot of rum to cover in this video. There's 16 in total. So let's do a quick little overview of what we're dealing with. For lighter white rums, we've got the White Stache, we've got the Puesto Blend, and then we got the Breezeway Blend. Then for the Jamaican rums, we've got the Jamaican Pot Still Gold, the Jamaican Pot Still Black, and the Jamaican Pot Still Blonde. And for Demerara rums, we've got the Hamilton 86 and the Hamilton 151. Then we've got 6 different Guyana Jamaica blends. We've got the West Indies 1670 blend, the Navy Strength 114, the Florida Rum Society blend, the False Idol 151, the Grass Skirt blend, and the Lost Voyage. And lastly, we've got the Beachbum Berries Zombie blend and the Beachbum Berries Navy Grog blend, which were designed specifically for those cocktails. Okay, so we're gonna start off with the White Stache. Now, this is a blend of lightly aged rums, the bulk of which are from Trinidad, but there's also some Dominican Republic and Guyanese rums in here. Now, all that's, like I said, been charcoal filtered to be clear. It's bottled at 43.5% ABV and priced between $24 to $27 for a full liter. That's, I think, pretty damn good value. So, the first thing that I kind of noticed is there's pretty decent body and texture here for a white rum. Yeah, there's some vanilla notes, there's some caramel notes, but there's a touch of coconut here as well. It's not a dynamic rum, but you get those kind of gentle flavors of the vanilla, gentle caramel. But what's great is that it's all those flavors are sitting on top of this slightly rummy quality, It's not just a alcohol quality. There is a kind of sense of brash alcohol here, but I think there's enough of that rummy flavor that just makes this far more interesting than, say, something like a Bacardi or a Don Q Cristal. Next up, we have the Puesto blend. This is a blend for Puesto, which is a chain of 9 or 10 Mexican restaurants here in California. And this blend was specifically designed to be used in their house mojito, and it's a blend of lightly aged rums from Trinidad, Jamaica, and Guyana. And it's bottled at 43% ABV and priced around $26 for a full liter. I think immediately what you're going to notice on that sip is the Jamaica component. The White Stache doesn't have any Jamaica in it, and this does, and it's very clear. It's there's a big amount of tropical fruit relative to the White Stache, kind of hint of banana. This feels on the palate lusher and kind of richer than the White Stache. Again, all relative. I think in isolation, if you're coming from higher proof stuff, that won't be the case. But as I'm comparing kind of these kind of quote unquote similar rums, these white rums, I'm kind of pointing out where they kind of differ from one another. Now, what I am also picking up on the back end and the finish is a little hint or essence of mint. Now, let's be real. That might entirely be from the fact that, I just read on the prompter that they use this to make their house mojitos with. So that might have just stayed with me and kind of colored how I'm tasting this rum. Sure, but I still feel like I get a little bit of that. So, whatever that means. I think for someone who likes more bolder, more flavorful rums, I definitely think the Puesto blend is far more kind of my speed compared to the white Stache. It just has more of that character and more of that Jamaican flavor that I love. Now moving on, we have the Breezeway Blend, which is named after the Spike's Breezeway Cocktail Hour YouTube channel. Now Spike over there was a big part of making this blend with Ed Hamilton. And this actually starts off as the white Stache, which, obviously is a blend, like I said, of Trinidad, Dominican Republic rums, and Guyanese rums. And added to this is a little bit of the Jamaica Pot Still Blonde. Now, I'll get into a little more detail about what this rum is in a few minutes, but just know it's a lightly aged Jamaican Pot Still rum from Worthy Park. Now, based on what I read online, potentially the Breezeway Blend is 85% the white Stache and the remaining 15 being the Jamaica Pot Still Blonde, but don't quote me on that. I did get it off the internet after all. The Breezeway Blend is bottled at 42.5% ABV and priced around $26 to $30 for a full liter. Again, tremendous value. So, where I kind of said that the Puesto blend had this big Jamaican tropical fruit flavor relative to the white Stache, I feel like this even kicks it up a few more notches. I get this like richer, lusher, banana, and kind of general tropical vibe on the palate from this. And there's like an essence of pear as well that really is nice. I like that it actually has like a longer finish. Actually, now I'm getting like a boozy coconut banana thing, That being said, even though, like I said, it has like a longer finish, it's all relative. Like this still is relatively short on the finish compared to many other rums, to higher ABV rums. But again, relative to these three, this feels like the more longer lasting, more kind of impactful rum sipping experience. But I do like the back end of the Puesto. It's got a little more crunchiness, that mint thing that kind of lingers through. I think it just adds some complexity to the overall sipping experience of the Puesto. And I kind of wish the Breezeway kind of had a little bit of that. Maybe in an ideal world, my perfect Hamilton white rum blend would be maybe equal parts both of these to come together to give me a lot of that rich Jamaican quality, but that little bit of crunchy mint on the back end to kind of cap it all off. All right, so next up we have the three Jamaican rums, the Jamaican Pot Still rums. We're actually going to start off with the gold and the black. Now both are around $26 or $27 for a 750. And they're basically the exact same rum. It's actually what Hamilton describes as a blend of very light, and heavy Jamaican Pot Still rums from Worthy Park. Now that blend of very light and heavy Jamaican Pot Still rums from Worthy Park starts at 85% ABV, and then it's proofed down to 46.5% ABV for these releases. Now it's worth noting that blend is entirely unaged, no age whatsoever. But as you can see here with the black and the gold, there's clearly some color here, and that is, again, not from aging, it's entirely from the addition of caramel coloring. Now the black is colored with double strength black caramel, and the gold is colored with gold tint caramel. For each of the bottles, each 750, there's something like slightly less than 3 drops of caramel coloring added, but clearly, as you can see, even just 2 or 3 drops goes a very long way. Does the addition of caramel affect the taste of the rum? Does the different type of caramel and intensity of the caramel coloring affect the rum? So are these two different tasting rums? Some people would say yes, some people would say no. I'm going to get to the bottom of it right now. So we're going to start off with the gold here. So I'll say right away, this is far more bolder and in your face compared to the white rums that we just tried. Obviously, it's higher in ABV, but it's all Jamaican. It's all pot still, where the other ones had, some column distillate in there as well. And, not Jamaican rums in there as well. This being all Jamaican, just so much character, so much bold flavor. So this has a very characteristic Worthy Park flavor, like this kind of Worthy Park banana note. But it's not just that. It's like a banana pear flavor, but it's not just banana pear because it towards the middle or back end morphs into a little bit of banana pear and like a medicine flavor, the flavor of like, I guess, slight cough syrup. It also has like this boozy crayon flavor and a little bit of like a sour tang, which actually I kind of like. Again, keeps things dynamic and interesting. And there's definitely like the presence of alcohol in the back end kind of kicks things up a little bit, and you kind of feel like some of that heat. All right, let's try the black here to see how similar or different it is. Cheers. So the thing that really kind of jumps out, yeah, it has on that Worthy Park banana, but the back end I think is different. There's more of a like a slightly heavier mouthfeel, but the back end has like a little bit of slight bitterness. You know, it's not super in your face. It's not clear and obvious, but I perceive this little tinge of bitterness on the back end that I did not get on the gold. The heavier mouthfeel, but then also that little tinge of bitterness kind of maybe takes a little bit away from like what felt like very dynamic banana, pear, medicine, boozy crayon. I am getting those flavors. They feel slightly subdued. And part of that could just be being distracted by that little bit of mouthfeel, that extra mouthfeel, and a little bit of bitterness. But to me, at least in these few minutes that I've been here recording this and tasting these two rums, the gold and black, there is a difference. I think the presence of the caramel changes things for me. So now we're gonna move on to the Jamaica Pot Still Blonde. Now, unlike the gold and the black, there's no caramel coloring added to the blonde, though there is a little tinge of color here. I don't know if that picks up on the camera or not. And that's because there actually is some aged rum here. So it does start off as that same blend of 85% ABV, very light, and heavy Worthy Park rums. And what Hamilton does is proofs it down to 70% ABV and then ages it for about 18 months in barrels that once held St. Lucian rum. And then like a very small amount of 1-year-old, very light Worthy Park rum is added to the mix. And then that blend is aged for like another 5 to 6 months. Then it's proofed down to 45% ABV for this release and then priced around $28, $28, $30 depending on where you are. All right, here goes. Cheers. What the blonde here has that the other ones were missing is some of that wood aged flavor, right? So I'm getting a little tea, getting a little vanilla, which I didn't get in those two. And yeah, I still get that little bit of banana. And maybe I've gained a little bit of like very light, faint, like Sharpie, very faint. So I think it's really funny. Having gone through all three of these now, you would think I would prefer the blonde because it has some age to it. But I actually don't. I think the blonde kind of flattens things up, kind of gives you that age flavor, but all the dynamic, fiery notes of the other two kind of get flattened by the age and makes it a little less interesting. And you lose some of the passion that you get with this unaged distillate. So for me, personally, I think I prefer probably the gold, right? I think the black has a little bit of muted quality relative to the gold, and the gold is kind of a little bit more kind of just in your face and a little bit more kind of just bright Jamaican. So I would say that's where I would kind of lean towards. I think maybe the blonde for someone who's newer to sipping rums neat and Jamaican rums in general, maybe they'd probably prefer the blonde. Maybe it's the more kind of natural first step, you know? So it's not as in your face, it's not as kind of fiery and rude, you know, rude in the best way. All right, so now let's move on to the Demerara or Guyanese rums, and we've got the 86 and the 151. Now, they are both the exact same rum. They're a blend of both pot and calm still rums produced by Demerara Distillers Limited, the folks that make El Dorado. Now, Hamilton gets his hands on that blend at 77% ABV, then it's proofed down to 75.5% or 151 proof for the 151, and then for the 86, it's proofed all the way down to 86 proof or 43% ABV. Now, per Ed Hamilton, the oldest rum in these releases is about 5 years, but I suspect like a lot of it is younger than that. Now, where I live, the 86 goes for around like $26 for a 750, and the 151 goes for around like $31, $32. All right, let's start with the 86 here. Cheers. Look, this is a rum that has always put a smile on my face. It's simultaneously sweet, savory, earthy. There's a medicine thing here. There's a tobacco flavor. There's a smoky thing going on. There's actually like a slight absinthe-like note on the finish that is kind of really nice. Yeah, it is light and thin relative to like higher proof stuff, but honestly, comparing the 86 to something like a El Dorado 5-year or 8-year, This feels far more like robust and more Demerara, if that makes sense. Like this tastes more like what I think a Demerara rum should taste like, you know? Like this actually plays into my impression of Demerara rums, right? If all you ever knew was El Dorado, the 3, the 5, the 8, and maybe the 12, I don't think that gives you a full, accurate picture of what Demerara Distillers Limited is capable of and what a lot of rum fans and rum lovers really love about their rums, right? I think this, the 86, is a more truer window into that flavor profile and into that world. So let's move on to the 151, and obviously very high in ABV. Should you be drinking a 75.5% ABV rum, especially at 9:40 p.m. on a Wednesday night? Probably not. A small amount of it goes a long way in your cocktails, and it's great in cocktails. But as a sipping thing, maybe on like paper you shouldn't do it. But I don't know. Let's find out. Let's give this a taste. Cheers. So here's the thing. At 75.5% ABV, it's not I was gonna say gut punch, but it's not a throat punch. Like it doesn't suddenly like burn the inner lining of my esophagus. Not at all. And I have had other 151 rums that definitely do that. This isn't that. So this is richer, sweeter, smokier, bolder than the 86, right? It has a stronger medicine note, but has like a stronger kind of like burnt caramel, burnt coffee flavor. Everything's just amped up, and it's frankly alluring. Those flavors, even in the 86, those flavors are alluring. It's the same flavors there, but everything is just starts to build up bolder and more intense on your palate. But before it can be too rich, too sweet, too smoky, too bold, too medicine-y, too savory, the 75.5% ABV cuts through all of that, and it kind of like keeps it in check. Remarkably balanced, actually, given all that, and remarkably drinkable and tasty for a 151. Now, would I recommend actually drinking this? No, of course not. It's way too high in ABV, but every now and again, a little bit here and there, yeah, hell yeah, you know? And I haven't never even tried like proofing this down with a little bit of water. I bet it is pretty damn good at a couple of splashes of water, bringing it higher than the 86, but lower than the 151 in terms of proof. I bet it sings somewhere in between that for sure. Ultimately, I would say for 99% of the people out there, drink the 86 neat. It has so much character and personality for all the reasons I already mentioned, and why I think it's better than a lot of the entry-level El Dorado stuff. That being said, you should try very cautiously to drink the 151. You'll see how much character and flavor it actually has, and it's not just alcohol. It's not just burn. There is a lot of interesting stuff going on. So next up, we have the 6 different Guyana Jamaica blends. Now, my grand theory for these blends is that Hamilton is using the same base Guyana rum that he uses to make the 86 and the 151. He uses that for the Guyana component in these rums, and also that, you know, that same very light and heavy Worthy Park blend that he uses to make the Pot Still Gold and the Pot Still Black. Well, my theory is that he also uses those in these rums as well. However, for each of these blends, he's going to, you know, do different proportions between those 2 different components, plus potentially each component is coming into that blend at different proofs. Just a theory, like, you know, frankly, it's kind of a narrative that I've made up in my head, and I kind of like it, so I'm just gonna go with it, you know. But you know, don't believe a word I'm saying, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Build your own narrative, folks. Facts be damned. Now, the reality is 1, 2, or 3, or maybe all of them have more than just what I just laid out. Maybe there's some more aged components of those kind of base Guyanese and base Jamaican blends in there, potentially, and maybe a lot more going on. But as a framework, I think it's kind of a good framework to kind of think about these 6 rums through that lens. Okay, so let's talk about the Navy Strength 114 first. So this is 60% Guyana and 40% Jamaica. The Guyanese component comes into the blend at 77% ABV, and the Jamaican component comes into the blend at 85% ABV. Once they're blended together, they're then proofed down. The total blended rum is proofed down to 57% ABV or 114 proof. Hence the 114 on the label, which I guess is Navy strength. I say guess, I mean yes, but maybe it's complicated. Now, the bottle seems to be priced between like $30, $31 for a 750. Okay, cheers. That is, ooh, a lot going on. That is kind of nice. I actually kind of like that. Nice mouthfeel, great presence on the palate, long finish. It is pretty high in ABV. It's our first high ABV rum of the video at, what I say, 57%, 114 proof. And it's very clear and apparent. This thing is still going. Up front is where I get that kind of bright Jamaican tropical fruit note, you know? It's not distinctly banana, right? Where all the other Jamaican experiences we've had so far leading up to this has felt very singularly banana. This feels more just broadly speaking, little essence of tropical fruit. And underneath that, there's a little bit of like slight bitterness and slight acridness, which I actually don't mind because I think it kind of offsets the fruitiness. And like midway through, it slowly starts kind of becoming and blooming into kind of a Demerara rum, you know, that, or at least that's where those flavors are a little bit more apparent, is kind of on the back end. That's kind of burnt brown sugar, burnt caramel. There's definitely like a fiery kind of coffee bitter thing happening on the back end as well. Now, of course, I'm biased because it's higher in ABV. That's kind of my wheelhouse, and this definitely kind of plays in that space. But yeah, this is good stuff. So next up is the West Indies 1670 blend, which you might also see labeled as the New York blend, because I think it was originally created for the New York market. And it was designed to be kind of like a very flavorful daiquiri rum. So what Hamilton did was kind of start with the 60-40 Guyana Jamaica blend of the 114, and then made some tweaks to the proportions, and then proofed it down to 42% ABV. Price-wise, I've seen it for like around $27, $28. All right, cheers. So, I mean, it's kind of unfair to the rum coming off such a higher proof rum down to something that's only 42% ABV. It's kind of unfair because it is thin, light, a little watery in relation to what we just had. If I had maybe gone the other way around, might have been a fair shot for the rum, but since it kind of was modeled after the 114, I figured that's where we'd start. I think proof down at 42, a lot of those flavors that felt very kind of pronounced in the Navy strength kind of get a little muddled. Like they all kind of sort of in a way collapse on top of one another. So I am getting a little like burnt caramel, maybe a little bit of like light pear, but nothing really kind of stands out. There's not a real journey and like an experience on the palate. That being said, it's not bad. I mean, I think it is probably a super approachable rum. But honestly, at that 42% ABV, I think the Hamilton 86 is much more of an interesting kind of sipping experience. A little more robust, and it has like some actual kind of moments that are kind of unique, and you go from one to the other, and it's just a little more engaging that way. This feels a little bit flat. Now, next up is the Florida Rum Society blend. Now, obviously, it was made for the Florida Rum Society. Now, it's 65% Guyana and 35% Jamaica. And based on what I've read here and there, the Jamaica component actually has some age to it, which would mean it's not necessarily the exact same unaged rum that goes into the Jamaica Pot Still Gold and Black, but maybe it's the blonde, which has some age on it, or maybe it's a component of the blonde that goes into here. I don't know. I could have gone down that rabbit hole, but for my own sanity's sake, I chose not to. Now, what I do know, it's 45% ABV, and I've seen it priced between like $26 to $28 for the 750. Cheers. This is a easy drinking, yummy Demerara forward rum. There's a little bit of like saltiness here that I'm actually kind of digging. It kind of makes the rum kind of interesting. That being said, it's not the all-in heavy Demerara note of like the Hamilton 86. To me, that has this a little bit of like unctuousness. This isn't unctuous, fun word. This is brighter in that Demerara forward flavor. Like it's high top notes, right? As a sipper, it's not all that dynamic. That's my buzzword, I guess, for this video. I like dynamic rums when I'm sipping them. This doesn't do that. It's got a pretty kind of even keel kind of thing going on. It's not like one note. It's not taking you on any twists or turns. That being said, I think if you're a relative newcomer to sipping rums, this would be a very approachable and enjoyable experience. All right, so next up we have the Lost Voyage, which is a blend for strong water, which is a fantastic bar out in Anaheim. We don't know the actual breakdown of the blend. We do know, though, that the Jamaican component does have some age to it, so potentially it might be sort of similar to the Florida Rum Society, but just maybe different proportions. I don't know, just a guess. It is bottled at 45% ABV, and it's priced around anywhere from like 28 to 30 bucks. I feel like every single rum that I've talked about so far is like 28 to 30 bucks. It's just a thing. All right, cheers. So this sort of feels like it's doing a similar thing to the Florida Rum Society blend, where it's kind of Demerara, but then kind of midway through you get a little bit of Jamaica. I'd say this has a little bit more follow through and finish than the Florida Rum Society. I think because the Guyana element here feels heavier, a little more unctuous, word of the day apparently. I think altogether this just feels like a more rummier rum compared to like the Florida Rum Society. I'm also picking up a little bit of like apple and a little bit of allspice, which is really nice. It's really nice. It feels it has this little tinge of like, the slightest tinge of like an autumnal thing, that apple and allspice thing. Yeah, I really, really like this. Might be maybe combined with the Navy Strength, my kind of two favorites. I think I definitely like this more than the Florida Rum Society. Sorry, folks from Florida who are watching this. All right, so moving on to the next one, we have the Grass Skirt blend, which is the newest rum in the Hamilton lineup. It's a blend made for the Grass Skirt, which is a bar and restaurant out in San Diego. Now, no information on the breakdown of this blend either, but we do know it is bottled at, as he's looking at the label, 45.5% ABV. I think I got a bottle of this for around $40, which is a lot, but know that it is a liter and not a 750 like these guys. All right, here goes. Cheers. I'll be upfront here and say that I do not like sipping this rum neat. There is this pronounced bitter and pronounced acrid back end that is very, very distracting. It starts off nice enough, and in fact, I think it has like more of a heavier emphasis on the Jamaican side of things. Yeah, actually, what seems like a nice medium mouthfeel, a little lush tropical kind of thing going on, and then it's overtaken by bitterness and a little acridness, and it's still going. It's a bitterness that is, yeah, it's living here now. I know, sorry, I don't want to be a hater or anything, but yeah, it's a little too distracting, that bitterness, frankly. Now, I know this is not a cocktail video, but in cocktails, it's, good. Like, it makes for, I think, a pretty decent Mai Tai. And I'm sure it's great in a bunch of other cocktails, but as a sipper, yeah, I mean, unless you really like bitter things, and there are people who do, like I think if you really, really, really like Negronis, I'm kind of pulling back from that because I really like Negronis and I don't like this. So I don't know. That bitterness is it's a bit of a distraction. Now, the final release within the Jamaica Guyana blend series, if you will, is the False Idol 151. Now, it is made for False Idol, which is a phenomenal tiki bar out in San Diego. Killer decor, amazing drinks. Definitely worth checking it out if you're ever in San Diego. And this is 85% Guyana and 15% Jamaica. And obviously it's bottled at 151 proof or 75.5% ABV. It is a full liter, and I think it's priced around $37-38. And I am excited to give it a try. I mean, I've had it before in preparation for this video, but I'm completely blanking now on what it tastes like. I blame these other 5 rums. Cheers. So, it sort of seems like kind of similar to the Demerara 151, where there is rich, sweet, savory, smoky notes, but the high ABV cuts through it. And like that one, it's not hurting as it goes down the throat. Like I feel like it's all, whatever intensity there is kind of just happening on your tongue, but it kind of doesn't hurt as it goes down. Initially, it's kind of light and sweet on your palate. And then you get a little kind of turn of intensity because of the alcohol. I was gonna say root beer, herbal, slightly absinthe kind of note. It's not strong and prominent. There's a candied element here as well. Like take a version of Guyana Demerara rums, that savory, smoky, sweet, medicinal, woody kind of thing, smoky thing, and make it into a hard candy. There's an element of that happening kind of midway through, which I kind of actually like. It's kind of intriguing. You know, I think I should kind of try this against the other 151. Yeah. So I think the all Demerara 151 is much more mouth coating and a lot more heavier bass notes and more like richer, deeper notes, where this is higher and brighter, though they are very similar. And this has the False Idol 151 has that kind of candied note. It's tough to say that I think I prefer one over the other. They are doing slightly different things, but they are very, very similar in my opinion. So here's the thing. Not that I'm recommending anyone drink either one of these just because the high ABV, it's not a thing you should be doing, I guess. I mean, do what you want, but like don't hold it against me if you have a bad experience with drinking high octane stuff. But if you're new-ish to sipping rum and you wanted to try a 151 and you wanted to take like an approachable kind of 151, then I think the False Idol might be the way to go. It's a little lighter, a little brighter, but as a first kind of your baby's first 151, I think the False Idol 151 is the way to go. And I think across the board, the really interesting observation was how little of that Worthy Park banana note that I did not get at all in any of these, where I got it so much, and obviously the Jamaica Pot Still Gold, Black, and Blonde, and in the Puesto blend and the Breezeway blend. I didn't pick that up at all in these. I did get the Jamaica component in that. I got some tropical fruitiness, but it wasn't explicitly banana, which I think is kind of interesting. Now, these last two rums are collaborations between Ed Hamilton and Jeff Beachbum Berry. And if you're not familiar, Beachbum Berry is an author of a number of influential books on vintage tropical cocktails, and he was instrumental in finding and sharing many of the lost recipes from Tiki's golden age, including the zombie. So with that in mind, let's talk about the Beachbum Berry Zombie Blend. Now, obviously that was designed to serve as your go-to bottle for making zombies, but again, if you can put it in your mouth, then it's a sipping rum. Now, I could have sworn when the Zombie Blend had come out that it was confirmed to be a blend of rums from Jamaica, Guyana, and Trinidad, but I can't really find that information anywhere on Hamilton or Beachbum Berry's website, but I swear it was there. Like, I think it was there. Like, I'm pretty sure it was there. Maybe it wasn't. I don't know, but I could have sworn. I feel like at least there's Jamaica and Guyana. The third component, I don't think it's Puerto Rican. I think it is Trinidad. Maybe it's some other thing. Maybe it's Dominican Republic. Who knows? It is bottled at 59% ABV and priced around like 38 to 40 bucks for a full liter. So given the high ABV, it's kind of bold, it's kind of intense, it's kind of to be expected, but it has like this kind of fruity Jamaican heart in the middle that's kind of wrapped around this kind of bold, almost harsh Demerara shell. Like it has some bite and like this pretty lingering Demerara note, but it's a little intense, almost to the point where it's a little too intense. But I think what saves it is that underneath all of that is like this brown sugar richness that kind of offsets some of the intensity and kind of completes the overall package. I don't know, for something that's so tied to a specific cocktail, I think this is kind of a decent sipper. Like it's slightly dynamic and has like a slightly engaging journey with these layers of flavors that I'm kind of digging. And then lastly, we have the Beachbum Berry's Navy Grog blend. Now, in terms of what rums are in this blend, well, there's conflicting information out there. According to the back label, it has rums from Jamaica, Guyana, and Trinidad, and the Dominican Republic. But on Hamilton's website, it says just Jamaica, Guyana, and Trinidad, no mention of the Dominican Republic. But then on Beachbum Berry's website, it says Jamaica, Guyana, and Dominican Republic, and no mention of Trinidad. So who knows? Now, what I do know is that it's around 57% ABV and priced around 40 bucks for a liter. Cheers. So this is interesting. This feels lighter and brighter than the Zombie Blend. And it doesn't have that kind of really bold, intense Demerara thing. But there's definitely like a pronounced Jamaican component. But then it kind of veers into like crayon territory and potpourri territory, which frankly is not working for me. It's a jumbled kind of mess a little bit in that regard. As a sipping experience, it doesn't feel like a complete experience, where this kind of did, between the layers and just just overall it felt like, okay, there's a start to finish and there's a journey here. This, wherever it's taking me with the crayons and the potpourri, I'm not really feeling, to be honest. Now, obviously these two rums have been designed with the cocktails in mind, and they're fantastic in their respective cocktails. And if that's all you ever did with them, great. But I think it's worth trying a sip of everything that you mix with to kind of have a sense of what it's bringing to the cocktail. Okay, so that's the video. I'm gonna bring some of these over here. Overall, like, what do I think about the Hamilton lineup? Well, again, while this isn't a cocktail focused video, they are fantastic in cocktails, tremendous value when it comes to cocktails. But in terms of sippers, there's things I like here, things I don't like here. And if you ever were curious about sipping rums neat, again, don't feel like you have to go out and buy like a expensive bottle to kind of start dipping your toe into that. Try any one of these, right? Grab whatever you have in terms of Hamilton and give it a shot. And it might not be your thing, but that doesn't mean that there aren't other either Hamilton rums that might be your thing as a sipping experience, or there might be other non-Hamilton rums. But I think don't spend extra money if you don't have to. Like, try what you have and give it a fair shot. Try it under different conditions, different circumstances, with ice, with a little bit of water, neat, obviously, as well. And look, if you find something here that you really like, stick with it, but use that maybe as a springboard to try other rums as well. If you find that you're really digging the Jamaican stuff from Hamilton, then, venture out and try actual Worthy Park branded rums. See what they do as their own kind of officially branded and labeled rums. Try the Hampton stuff, try Appleton, try it all, right? And if you really like the Demerara stuff, try El Dorado, though I think, the lower age stuff isn't going to be that impressive. But try some single cast releases from some third-party bottlers, and I think you might be wowed. So that's it for this video. Those are my thoughts on all 16 of these Hamilton rums. I'd like to know, do you have a favorite Hamilton rum? As a cocktail rum, sure, but is there one that you actually do kind of like sipping on neat? Let me know by leaving a comment down below, and thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you all next time. Cheers.